This is the story of two white families who lived in a black neighborhood and stayed too long and paid with their lives for that mistake. It's also the story of a young white couple moving into a black neighborhood in Cleveland who are trying to convince us there is no mistake. Everything's good, everything's safe. There is no danger, there is no black on white hostility, there is no threat of black mob violence. Why don't we start in Flint, Michigan? This old dude, probably my age, sleeping on the couch just a night or two ago. 5 of the fellas came in, roughed him up a bit, started taking his stuff out of the house. Then they went upstairs to work on his wife, who was still asleep. He runs in the kitchen, grabs a gun, runs upstairs, exchanges gunfire, shoots one, they shoot him, he's dead. So he spent his life working at for one of the car companies, I think GM, out there in Flint, Michigan. After he retired, he started devoting more time to his love of music. He was a drummer in a pipe band, belonged to a couple of other symphony bands, things like that. He and his wife, maybe they felt they were immune. Maybe they thought they lived in that house their entire life and nobody was going to force them out. Or maybe they felt trapped because the value of their house had plummeted so much they felt as if they couldn't afford to move. Regardless, they were a white family in a black neighborhood. You know, here's the truth about Flint these days. Ever since the Flint water thing came out about a year ago, remember that? The water became tainted because of some problem in the water department. It has become an article of faith for black people, not just in Flint, but for people who practice black hostility of all colors all over the country. That the only reason this was allowed to happen in Flint is because it is a chocolate city. Hillary Clinton went to Flint and told them that. Ask any black person in Flint, they will tell you the only reason there's lead in their water is because it's a chocolate city, and that's how white people roll. So the amount of black on white hostility in Flint is enormous. The amount of black on white hostility is something every white person, whether they admit it or not, in Flint has to deal with. Some people think they can ignore it, like this guy.
None of our family could actually watch the video. I couldn't even listen to it.
Video so hard to watch their uncle violently attacked by strangers. It was caught on tape for people to watch over and over again.
We first showed you this video a few weeks ago. A viewer sent it to us, and then we took it to Flint police.
Since then, the detectives say you've helped them identify who was responsible, helping to bring justice to the man. Only on ABC 12 tonight, a look at how the man is doing it, and you were able to meet him today.
Yes, I spoke with him and his family. He is doing much better, but his niece tells me the 62-year-old continues to suffer from his injuries. They're still working with police to continue to discover any details about this attack.
I asked him what happened, and he honestly didn't remember, couldn't even tell me what happened.
Her uncle left to get a bite to eat at a church on Flint's east side and returned the next morning in horrible shape.
He was hurt. Both of his eyes were black and blue. His nose was all busted up. He had bruises all over his back, his sides, everywhere.
She found out later her uncle was attacked outside of a church on Davison Road in Flint.
I guess the kid had a sucker bar in his hand, which is kind of like a roll of quarters, so it made his hit 10 times harder.
The attack actually happened on May 27th. Flint police say they didn't see the video or hear of the attack until we received it a month later and sent it to them.
It just disgusted me all around. I don't understand how anybody of any age could jump on a senior citizen like that.
Police say there might also be a few different versions of the video, which they're working to get a hold of. For now, the 18-year-old attacker and the person who filmed it are facing aggravated assault charges.
We just want justice. We want them to get what they deserve.
Now let's head on out to Cleveland. You know, we did this exact story just a few weeks ago. Remember that story we did about Brewery Town? Bunch of nice upscale businesses decided to move into a black neighborhood. All the fellas didn't like that. They were throwing rocks, disturbing the business, going into the business, hassling the customers, challenging the employees, throwing rocks at the people outside. And then, you know, when the violence came to a head, all the black people in the neighborhood got together and figured out, well, it's the white people's fault, and yeah, we know how to solve it. It's by white people giving black people a lot of free stuff. I don't know if that's what's on the mind of this young couple who moved into Cleveland. They have a butcher shop, and the butcher shop has been the target of some violence. It's in a place called Slavic Village. We'll hear more about that in a minute. Slavic Village. They roll into this neighborhood thinking maybe it's cheap rent. Maybe they said they want to start something new in Slavic Village, but they want to be a part of something new in Slavic Village. Well, what they're a part of, listen, I'm down with people like that, okay? If they walked in here right now, I'd say, listen, I admire people with that kind of skill and pluck and nerve to get a skill, to acquire a business, to start a business. But once they cross the line and start telling me that their business is safe and they're trying to create this little bubble of denial, deceit, and delusion, that's when we here have to call them on that, because that is a dangerous thing, not just to them, but to other people, like their customers. So the local reporter gave them a big Valentine, saying how great food they had, what great people they were for investing in that community, trying to make something out of it. You know, this is not the first time we've done something on the Slavic Village, right? Does anybody remember this story? Welcome to Slavic Village in Cleveland. This is the story of how, not just in Cleveland, but how thousands of businesses all over the country have been driven out of these old ethnic neighborhoods where the Poles settled, the German, the Irish, the Italians. Those neighborhoods are all gone now. And all the hard-working people who once lived there and kept immaculate homes, they're all gone. A couple people have stayed. They are targets of relentless black violence. And this is just one story of one company that's dead. They just don't know it yet.
We can only do so much before we're forced to close.
It's been a fixture of Slavic Village for 45 years, but the owners of Flint Bike Shop say they're being run out of business.
I was angry, I was hurt. Who could do this to us?
Al and Marty Zaleski say the shop has been terrorized all summer, starting in June when thieves broke in and stole a dozen bikes under repair worth thousands of dollars.
They cleaned us out. All of our customer repairs were stolen. A lot of our own personal valuable property, you know, antique bikes.
They say suspects were caught on surveillance camera at a nearby church, but detectives never followed up.
I understand that they're very busy and there's a lot of crime out there, but I think these kids keep targeting us and keep coming back because nothing is happening.
Then someone spray painted an obscenity on the side of the building. And this month, someone threw a rock through an upstairs window where the Zaleskis live with their 4 grandkids. They say over Labor Day weekend, 2 more bikes were stolen.
It's only a few of these thugs that are ruining the whole neighborhood.
The only reason that we are still here is because we love this community.
The Zaleskis now arming themselves, keeping watch at night, and planning to buy security cameras of their own when they can afford it.
We're afraid for our lives at this point because they're getting so brave. They're right in our face calling us names and stuff.
In fear and struggling to make up lost revenue, they're calling on the community to keep an eye out for each other.
We just have to all stick together.
So I am totally down with all the small business people trying to scratch out a living, like these guys that work this bicycle shop. Bicycle shops all over the country are targets of black violence and theft. Lots and lots of it happening, especially in these inner cities, like Slavic Village. You know, with this magazine article on Slavic Village kind of called it right away. Boy, has this place changed, it said. Slavic Village has always been full of working class people, but many of the hard-working folks who died or moved away seem to have been replaced by people who hardly work. The once well-maintained homes with meticulously pruned lawns now have chipped paint, hanging awnings, and missing roof tiles. A few houses look like a good whack might send them crashing down. And on and on and on. This is Slavic Village. So this guy, okay, so here's the drill. Okay, so this guy is a target now, and I don't see how his business is going to survive. I don't even know why he's still there. But here's one thing I really don't understand. So his business has been there for 45 years. I mean, that's a lot of change, just as we just heard about in this magazine. And he and his wife don't even have the stones with their last dying breath to look into that TV camera and tell people the truth about what happened to their neighborhood. Look, there used to be a bunch of Germans and Poles who lived there. They had their own churches. They had their own schools. They had their own clubs. They were driven out. And everybody calls it white flight. I call it ethnic cleansing because that's what it was. So somehow this guy didn't get the message. Listen, we've seen them before. These stories don't end well. But you won't look into the camera and call it what it is, to call out the black violence, the black mayhem, the black chaos that has ruined your neighborhood, ruined your business, ruined your life, ruined your family, ruined Slavic Village. Come on, man. What are they going to do to you? Are they going to call you a name on your way out of town? By the way, get those kids out of there. You got 2 grandkids living with you? Get them the hell out of there. Or you won't just be in bankruptcy court, you'll be in child abuse court, because that's what the hell that is. I know I should have a little more empathy for these people, but I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do or say that hasn't been, that they didn't already know 30 years ago. They just chose to ignore. This is the triumph of hope and desperation over experience. And I mean, the party's over for them. There's nothing they can do to avoid making the black kids angry. Man, we could do Cleveland stories all night and day. Let's do this next one, just as a prelude to the worst one of all. This is one of those stories that's weird enough on its own merits, but then it got really weird. When I see these stories now, a bunch of black people going into a convenience store with guns, pointing them around, stealing all the goodies, I usually don't make that big of a deal about it because I could do a couple of these a day. So what I'll do, maybe I'll just string them together with some other examples, maybe from that neighborhood or something like that. But this one is a little weird. So we got 4 guys, 4 black people going in, they're robbing the store, they'll probably get $100 and some candy. Well, they found the guys who did it. And somebody in the comments section figured out the big picture. They ended up catching 5 people for this crime, including these 3, but including the guy we're interested in is on the left. His name is Jeffrey McWhorters Jr. And in this case, we do need the junior because Jeffrey McWhorters Sr. has also spent his lifetime having his name in and out of the crime pages. But here's where this story gets strange. So one of the readers popped in and said, "Hey, how did that dude ever get out of jail for that murder he was involved in a couple of years ago?" I said, "What that? That can't, I said, "What? That can't be true. He couldn't have been involved in a murder a couple of years ago and still be out on the street." Well, not only was he involved in the murder in 2012, this was one of the most notorious murders in Cleveland for a couple years before and after that. It was so notorious it was covered on that television show 48. I think it's called The First 48. So Jeffrey McWhorters Jr. and his buddies were arrested and charged with firing a couple of guns, into the birthday party of a 14-year-old girl. And here are some photos from the TV show First 48. But what's weird is I cannot find one molecule of electronic or print news where they say what happened at the trial if it ever went to trial. Now, if I was one of those TV reporters, I'd hop in my jet, go out to Cleveland, and figure out why this guy is out walking the street as another example of catch and release. But in the meantime, I'll probably have to just depend on some of our viewers and readers from Cleveland to help me figure it out. What was he doing out on the street? Yeah, that was him in those hoodies. The beginning of the video, he had a hoodie on. Mr. Jeffrey McWaters Jr., poster boy, catch and release. When you see the cops, the cop captains and cop chiefs, they come on local news and they go, "Oh yeah, you got to take your earbuds out. You got to keep your head on a swivel. You got to pay attention to what you are doing." Well, why don't you pay attention to what you are doing? This is probably not the cops' fault, but it's the judges and the courts. When you catch somebody, why do you let them go so easily? You know they're just going to be back out on the street committing crimes. When cops pick up somebody on the street for a violent crime, or when they find a victim of a violent crime in a black neighborhood, they can't tell the difference in criminal record between the dead person and the person they're looking for. And this is a good example of it. So if you're out in Cleveland and you want to avoid being involved in that TV show, The First 48, other than as an enthusiastic viewer, then I ask you to please take my counsel on this one matter. Don't make the black kids angry. Now here's the worst Cleveland story of all. A family in Cleveland with a 40-year-old business there, a car company. They went on the air. The interview never aired, by the way. That's what they kind of forget to tell you here, till after their death. They went on the air and basically predicted their own death.
Trina and Michael Kuznick were found shot to death inside the car dealership that the married couple ran together. And that's just a few weeks after Trina Kuznick went on camera with an uncanny assessment of the crime happening in her neighborhood.
You can't get the police here. There's either not enough or there's too much crime or something's going on to the fact where we can't get any help or support over here.
It's a March 22nd interview News 5 investigator Sarah Buttison conducted with Trina Kuznick, the owner of Mr. Cars on East 185th Street in Cleveland.
And the glass was just everywhere.
Kuznick complaining about police response times after her business was broken into. Police showed up 6 hours after she called for help.
I mean, 6 hours. Imagine being in a car accident and waiting 6 hours for the police to come. I mean, it's just not acceptable. And I think that we need to really take a good look at it before our city just crumbles apart.
Fast forward, and it's Kuznick's family and longtime friends now crumbling. Saturday, police tape surrounded the family business that was just about to celebrate its 40th anniversary. Cleveland police said the Kuznick's 19-year-old son discovered his parents' bodies after he had trouble reaching them.
I've known this family over 30 years. I watched him work. I watched Mike work on this lot with his dad. And to lose his life over what? Over nothing.
And I called 911 and said my building has been broken into.
Kuznick's assessment of neighborhood crime back in March eerily described what would happen to her and her husband just weeks later.
How is it right that people can just come in and do this to us and there's nobody to stop them? It's like the Wild West. It's like East Cleveland's creeping in over here.
Build this family up, Lord. Bless them. There was a horrific act of violence that took place at this site on Good Friday.
Several hundred people stand united in the parking lot of Mr. Cars on East 185th Street Friday evening.
Michael and Trina were murdered by animals that took their lives at their own place of business.
Relatives, friends, and people in the community held a vigil to remember 47-year-old Michael Kuznick and his 46-year-old wife, Trina.
Trina and Mike were good, hardworking people trying to provide for their family. For this to happen is sickening.
The parents of 3 children were gunned down last Friday between 7:30 and 9:30 p.m. inside the car dealership they owned, a family-owned business for 40 years. Their 19-year-old son, Colin, discovered them.
He arrived to discover a scene so horrifying it's hard to imagine. Found his mother lying in a pool of blood in that showroom right there.
For all you young go-getters ready to set the world on fire with your vim and vigor and your desire to change the world and open a butcher shop in a black neighborhood, all I ask you to do is one thing. You probably assume that the people running your city, I don't care if it's Cleveland, Philly, Austin, whatever, you probably assume that they think what you are doing is a good thing. You probably assume that you have some kind of pact with the city. You'll open a business, they'll do your thing, they'll do theirs, which is protect your business. All I ask you to do is one thing. Go watch a city council meeting. You can see them on TV now. Watch a city council meeting. Watch them talk about crime. Watch them talk about who the victims are, who the predators are. See how much they're down with Black Lives Matter. All the time. The victims are black people. The predators are the white racists who are forcing black people to go into that car dealership and bunk those 2 people over the head and kill them. I know that's hard to believe. That's how they roll in those towns. And what you don't know in this case could kill you. You know, and just because we can, let's roll my favorite 911 call of all time. It comes from a Cleveland city councilman.
I'm sorry, y'all gotta listen to this shit, man.
Cleveland Police, Dispatch Lopez.
I need the police over here immediately. People need to go to jail tonight.
Where at, sir?
13615 Kelso.
Okay, what's going on?
I just got about 100 sorry black kids out here acting a fool. I'm Cleveland Councilman Eugene Miller in front of my damn house, and I'm sick of this shit.
Okay, you said about 100 people out there?
Yeah.
And what are they doing?
Man, just get the fucking police over here, okay?
What's your name, sir?
Cleveland Councilman Eugene Miller. I don't give a damn if it's being recorded. I said nobody has to live through this shit.
Sir, the police are on the way. I don't know why you're...
No, why? Because you don't have to live through this shit.
What's your phone number?
You don't worry about my damn number. I'm sick of this shit. You y'all damn job.
The police are on the way.
I went to Cleveland last year for the Republican National Convention. I had a meet up with some of my viewers and readers out there. One of them even gave me a keychain, which I still have. Thank you. People in Cleveland love their town. Maybe at one point there was a lot to love. Maybe there's a part of it that's still lovable. But when you ask them about East Cleveland, or ask them about what about the other side of Cleveland, everybody gives you a look like, oh yeah, we weren't even counting that. That doesn't count because that is just one big crime-infested hellhole. It's a black neighborhood and it's dangerous for white people there. A lot of people are finding that out the hard way. A lot of people are figuring out that a white person moving into a black neighborhood is a surefire way to make the black kids angry.